My name's Tim Pollard. I work for Plum Centre. Hopefully you will have heard of Plum Centre. We've been waiting for renewable heat incentive for nearly 4 years now. It's been delayed and delayed and delayed, but on the 9th of April, I'm delighted to say the scheme started. And let's just remind ourselves about what the scheme is for. It is a unique scheme worldwide. This is the first scheme in the world which is giving an incentive towards the generation of renewable heat. And the idea of the scheme is that it's supposed to bridge the difference in cost between replacing a conventional heating system with a fossil fuel device and installing a renewable heat device. So it's not supposed to be some fantastic bonanza for people. It's not supposed to make people a lot of money. What it is supposed to do is to make it an even playing field so renewables can play in the same scale as gas boilers or oil boilers or any other fossil fuel device. As far as the government's concerned, they've got several key drivers. The first one of which is to help us manage our energy use here in the UK. We have an oncoming energy crisis. We're already importing more gas than we produce. We have an aging fleet of power stations. By 2015, we're losing about 35% of our capacity. And on top of that, we've got the C word. We've got carbon, we've got climate change, and the government has signed up to some fairly challenging targets in terms of climate change. And the fact of the matter is, and government would admit this openly, they cannot achieve those carbon targets and burn fossil fuels. So they have to come up with a strategy to encourage us all to get away from fossil fuel devices. So, who can apply for the domestic RHI? Well, here's the great news. It's open to just about anybody. It's open to owner-occupiers, it's open to public rented properties, private rented properties, and self-build. The only area where it doesn't apply is new build outside self-build. So speculative house building cannot qualify for the renewable heat incentive. It's on gas or off gas. I think one of the confusions which came out as a result of the pre-running scheme, the Renewable Heat Premium Payment Scheme, which only applied in off-gas areas. This is anywhere. So if you either own your property or rent your property in the UK, you can have a renewable heat device. It's a 7-year scheme, but what they've done is actually calculate the savings over 20 years. So they've calculated all the calculations in terms of the tariffs has been done over 20 years, but they're collapsing the payment schedule over 7 years. Those of you who might be familiar with the feed-in tariff would recognize this. It's a quarterly payment made in arrears against kilowatt hours of heat generated. First rule is that all the products and all installers must be MCS accredited. No way around that. That is a strict rule and one that is adhered to. The small asterisk on there, and you'll see the subnote, that actually doesn't mean that all MCS products qualify, because that isn't the case. They must be MCS to qualify, but there is actually a qualifying products list which is published by the Department of Energy and Climate Change, because some things like gas absorption, heat pumps, for example, are not in the RHI scheme. If you want to get RHI, then you must have a Green Deal assessment. Again, no way around that. These are the rules set down by government. In most cases, and this is great news, it's deemed performance. So we're not necessarily fitting heat meterings. So the payment is made on a notional amount of heat generation, which is defined by the energy performance certificate, which is done during the Green Deal assessment. Okay? So nobody's going to come and read a meter. Nobody's going to argue about how much heat you've generated or not. The heat generated is defined by your energy performance certificate and paid on that basis. It's administered by Ofgem, and it was launched on the 9th of April this year. So, who can apply and what do they have to do to apply? In order to apply for this, you have to be the owner of the heating system, okay? And that means that at the moment, this may change, third-party ownership isn't possible. So if you remember, again, if you hark back to the feed-in tariff scheme, where we had the rent-a-roof schemes where people would come and give you free PV, they'd take the feed-in tariff, you'd get the free electricity. At the moment, that's not possible under regulations. Some people have been trying to work around that by leasing the area on which the plant sits. Very strange things like that, but I'd definitely recommend not getting involved in those. They must have had the system installed after the 15th of July 2009. Slightly different rules for legacy applications as against those who've had a product installed since the 9th of April. But I'll talk to you a little bit about that before. All the products in the system must be new. They must apply within 12 months of commissioning, and the commissioning date is set by the MCS standard. If the only thing that people must do in terms of an energy efficiency measure is loft and cavity, if there is no loft and cavity. So again, the Green Deal assessment and the EPC would discover that. So if you haven't got loft insulation, or you haven't got adequate loft insulation, or you haven't got cavity wall insulation, you have to do it. If you haven't got a cavity, then you don't have to do solid wall, all right? So during the application process, you simply say, I've got a solid wall, and that means that you don't have to do that. But that is the only energy efficiency requirement in terms of the RHI. Where you do have to do that, you have to have a second EPC to prove that you've done it, okay? But that's largely a desktop exercise. If you have already received some form of support from the Renewable Heat Premium Payment Scheme, for example, that will be taken off your payments. Okay, so that will be netted off. The government's not allowed to reward you twice for the same measure, so they'll take off whatever you've received in the RHI, and because it's quarterly payments every 7 years, that's, even my Geordie maths tells me 7 4s are 28, so we're taking off 1/28 every payment. What are the qualifying technologies? Well, here they are. It's biomass, and for biomass we've got biomass-only boilers and biomass pellet stoves with integrated boilers. So it's not standalone stoves, it's not log burners which stand alone. They have to have an integrated boiler in them. They have to be feeding into a wet system. It is only technologies which deliver heat either by water or by steam which qualify. Air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, or solar thermal panels, and as far as solar thermal is concerned, it's either flat plate or evacuated tube. Solar PVT does not qualify, all right? So if you've got a hybrid system, which is both photovoltaics and solar thermal, that doesn't qualify for RHI. The PV part qualifies for feed-in tariff. And you can see the tariffs there. So per kilowatt hour, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get 12.2 pence per kilowatt hour for biomass, 7.3 for air source heat pumps, 18.8 for ground source, and 19.2 for solar thermal. I have to say that it's largely considered by the industry that these are realistic tariffs. They're fairly well calculated. If you promise not to tell DEC, the biomass one is very generous. And they're probably going to discover that before too long. So let's have a look at the technologies. As I've said, biomass is available on biomass-only boilers and pellet stoves. So for a biomass-only boiler, that covers both the solid biomass, so logs that you might chop up. If a lot of people who've been bought biomass are living on farms or small holdings, they have access to timber, they can burn that. But the vast majority of biomass boilers which are installed are pellet boilers. They're the products that we sell from Plum Centre, and pellet boilers allow us to have a relatively easy and sophisticated delivery mechanism as far as the fuel's concerned. The payments are based on estimated heat use, as I've already said, which is defined by the EPC. There are air standards, there are air quality standards for biomass boilers, and there is also a fuel standard. Okay, and you must, every year, if you're a consumer, you must declare that you have bought only approved fuel. If you are a self-supplier, so if you are cutting your own timber, you're allowed to do that, provided that timber comes from your estate. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have a whole estate, it just means within the curtilage of the area you own. You're allowed to do that, but you must declare yourself a self-supplier. Otherwise, you choose the fuel from the approved suppliers list. That list is actually available now. It is not mandatory until next spring, but if you're sensible, you use that fuel now. Heat pumps. Heat pumps have some rules, and the rules on heat pumps is that they have to have a minimum seasonal performance factor of 2.5. That's actually not just the heat pump, that is the system in which it sits. So the heat pump itself must prove to have an SPF, but using the MCS heat emitters guide, you would then apply that to the whole system, including the distribution system, and you must come up with an SPF of 2.5 or more. That's actually an EU standard, and that says that if it's anything less than 2.5, it's not actually generating renewable heat. Now, the one difference between heat pumps and biomass is that they're only paying for the portion of output which is deemed to be renewable. And that means they're not going to pay on the amount of electricity which is used in actually running the plant. So if I can give you an example, if we've got an SPF of 3, then they won't pay on 1/3 of that, because that 1/3, if you've got a 3-to-1 ratio, that 1/3 is not renewable. They'll pay on 2/3 of the output. All right? If you need any clarity on that, then please feel free to come and see me afterwards. If you do want to have metering and monitoring, and that's an option, you can choose to do that, then you can do that, and you will get an extra payment of £230 per annum. The one circumstance that you will need to meter is if you retain a fossil fuel device and you have what we call a hybrid system. So you could retain either your gas boiler or your oil boiler or whatever your existing heating system is, and you can fit your heat pump to run with that. However, you will then have to meter the system because the Department of Energy and Climate Change don't want to pay on any of the energy used on the remaining fossil fuel system. So hybrids are possible, but unfortunately, we will have to meter the system. Solar thermal, available on evacuated tube and flat plate, as I've already said. The really great thing about solar thermal is you're allowed to have solar thermal and either of the other two technologies and claim 2 tariffs, okay? So you can have a heat pump or biomass and solar thermal and claim both those tariffs. And I think that's actually a very realistic circumstance for many people. The opportunity to use solar thermal for high temperature work would certainly mean that a heat pump would be working much more effectively. All the heat's eligible and all the heat's deemed. There's no circumstance on which you would have to meter. And solar thermal, as I say, can be fitted with either of the other two heat sources. The tariff is actually capped at the maximum. The 19.2 pence is the maximum the government is allowed to support any individual technology, and that's actually a cap which is defined by offshore wind, believe it or not. So the deeming figure, as far as solar thermal is concerned, is done as part of the MCS installation process. So it's shown on the MCS certificate, and that's the figure on which the tariff payment will be calculated. Now, this is a phrase you will probably only hear once in your life, and that is Ofgem have done a really good job on the application process, unlike the non-domestic scheme, which is a living nightmare. However, the domestic scheme is a really good application process. It's an online process, so you go to the Ofgem website, and as far as the household is concerned, they have to present 3 key bits of information. The MCS certificate number, which is clearly marked on the certificate, which the MCS installer must leave. The EPC number, again, which is a hard certificate, which must be provided, and the Green Deal Advice Report number. They're the 3 bits of information which are required, and that is all that is required. You don't have to provide the certificates themselves. The system actually goes away and interrogates the landmark database and the MCS database and brings that data back into the application. So very, very simple. And on top of that, there's a few declarations that the householder has to make in terms of they won't be moving, they'll keep the product working, that if they're using biomass, that they'll use only the accredited fuel stuffs. So for most people, that application process should take no longer than half an hour, should take less, and should give you an almost instant result. It'll tell you how much you're going to get and when you're going to get it. So really slick and smooth and easy process. Now, because, as I say, we've already had some legacy applications. We've already had some applications that have gone on before the start date of the scheme, right back until, as we saw, the original date set. They are staggering the applications so that the budget isn't affected as far as the overall scheme is concerned. So in the first 3 months, they allowed all new applications and anyone who hadn't or had any existing funding. From today, actually, they're allowing those who received RHPP, the Renewable Heat Premium Payment Schemes, before the 20th of May 2013, and then for the remaining and last 6 months of the year, they'll take all legacy applications and all new applications. All legacy applications have to be made in the first 12 months or they will not qualify, and then all applications after then must be made within 12 months of commissioning. I can't imagine why anyone would want to wait longer than then, but that is the rule. So within 12 months of commissioning. As far as the homeowner or renter is concerned, some basic responsibilities which are common sense really, that the system must be kept in good working order, that they mustn't have had any other finance from government, so no other government support, etc., etc., etc. So that's the declarations that the householder has to complete, including the one about the biomass fuel stuffs and any standards. That's the Ofgem website. Again, surprisingly enough, really good. Some good guidance notes. There's good guidance notes both for the householder and for installer. There's guidance notes on legacy applications. It's really quite good. And there's some little videos as well, which are showing you the process. And there is a helpline as well, which you can ring up should you need any direct guidance. So really quite well put together. That's me. I don't know why that's appeared there, but I think it's well worth it. You will notice I am officially a twit now, so if you do want to follow me, I am at Leamington SBC. I have already tweeted about the event today. Now I'm just going to say a few words about some of the qualifications that you're going to need to do this, all right? But I'm not going to say an awful lot about that because there's a colleague of mine downstairs who's sitting in the lobby, and she is going to give you all the details about training, both opportunities and requirements. I will repeat, all installers have to be MCS accredited. To be MCS accredited, then you have to have a competent person scheme in the technology that you choose. MCS accreditation is by technology. All right? So we have an expert on hand to talk us through this.
Okay, I'm here just to talk to you over what NAPIT are offering in regard to training. The MCS are now becoming quite strong in their opinions and what they want to see happen, which is right. We want to see good installs done. And part of this is, we're talking about here is the RHI technologies. The reason why we do these courses is for competency level. You want a competency level so that you're going to do a good job, that the customer is going to be satisfied, and the industry is upheld as being a viable industry along with all the other industries that we're trying to compete with. As you see on slide 1, we've got a heat pump installation. The courses that we do, they don't just cover the air source heat pump, they also cover ground source heat pump. It's been put together in conjunction with the Ground Source Heat Pump Association, and this is a course that you'll find is an in-depth course. It's a 4-day course, and one of the things that we spoke with at NAPIT is that we understand that your guys' time is precious. Any time lost on site does impact tremendously, especially if you've got a lot of lads on courses. And what NAPIT are doing is that I've offered my services towards it, but we're looking at doing weekend courses. So if there's a 4-day course, for instance, we'll start on a Friday, go through Saturday and Sunday and finish on a Monday, and hopefully that then won't cause too much disruption in your day-to-day working. Likewise, if we do a 1-day course, 2-day course, 3-day course, it's just something that we feel is going to be well received. Okay, so we do send out course notes. We send out booklets, and that comes with the course. It's important that you read them. Everybody gets the course notes and puts them in under the television or wherever they put them in the cupboard and don't read them. They're important you read them because they're helping you get that foundation so that when you come into the courses, you're not needing to learn from scratch. Okay. Again, we're on this, we're talking here about heat pump installs. Again, we mentioned about ground source, air to water, air to air heat pumps. What's good about the course is I teach a course, and one of the things that I do think is really important is it's hands-on experience. You guys, if you're installers, you don't want to sit and listen to a load of theory. You don't want to listen to too much conversation about what you already know. You want to know how the heat pump works. You want to know how it operates, and that's what this course is really good with. We also cover obviously health and safety and maintenance and fault finding. Big ones, maintenance and fault finding. If you install it properly, maybe you wouldn't need that, but okay. What do trainees need? Well, the minimum, what the course says that the minimum level is 2-3 qualification, level 2, MVQ level 2-3 in plumbing or conventional heating engineering, or a number of relevant years of experience. Okay. There is a MCS document, MCS 025, that talks about competency criteria and various things like that, and it actually talks about relevant levels or years of experience. But that's basically what you need to do the heat pump course. Solar domestic hot water, it's commonly known as solar thermal. Tim mentioned there about this this requirement. You've seen that there's a really high premium payment for solar thermal. It's a good course, this. Most guys say, well, I'm a plumber, I'm a heating engineer, what do I need solar thermal for? Well, it's the big one is that it helps you being able to self-certify the installation. It's also part of what's required under the MCS. And we've condensed this course into a 3-day course. The course is a really good course. Again, hands-on course. The training centre is really well equipped. And you come out with that qualification. So in this course, there is a criteria somewhat on what you need to have and what you need to do on the course. The big one is, and I look at this as the plumbing layout and design of solar hot water systems. People say I'm a plumber, I should know how. No, it doesn't work like that. This is a different system. Solar thermal has a fluid or of some sort. It could be water, it could be a trifocal fluid, but it still has a fluid with high temperatures. And these need to be controlled, and these need to be maintained, and these need to be understood. What do you need to take the course? Well, again, it's the same MVQ level or a demonstrable amount of years of experience and domestic vented and unvented hot water system certificates. That's an important part of this course. You know, there's a lot of guys out there. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a bit, about the storage, the unvented and vented hot water storage systems. You're not supposed to be fitting a system without the qualification. Okay, water regulations and bylaws. Okay, we call this, this is commonly known as the Water Regulations 1999. Okay, this course is now being required more and more, especially by water associations. It's also part of the requirements that you'll need to have for biomass installations, solar and solar thermal. When you sign your document, it always says on it, you know, have you got these qualifications? And everyone signs it, yes, but have they really got the qualifications? It is a requirement. Okay. What does the course cover? Well, the course it covers obviously you get the manual with it. It covers the Water Fitting Regulations 1999, the manual for the references of the bylaws in Scotland, which is a different bylaws to those guys who work up in Scotland. It consists of 12 modules. This, and you get the course manual, and you also get a DVD. And the DVD is quite informative. It's not like one of these ones that you go, oh yeah, I don't think I'll watch that. I'll just put that to one side. It is quite informative, and it is quite an intensive course, believe it or not. It has 12 modules. There's no practical with it at all. But once you've passed the assessment, you'll gain a RAS and BPEC water regs bylaw certification and competency card. Okay, and that one there, all you need to do is to have a knowledge of the plumbing and water industry. The course is for gaining an understanding of water regulations, and in particular those who want to become approved plumber or contractors, especially with the water companies. We quickly mentioned this before, domestic hot water storage systems. This is commonly what guys commonly call unvented or G3. The actual title is domestic hot water storage systems. It covers, as you know, why we don't call it that anymore is that it covers vented and unvented hot water storage systems. As you know, there was an unfortunate death of a child in regard to an a vented system. And this covers both systems. As we said before on the heat pump, you have to have this qualification to do the course. And with biomass and with heat pumps and with solar thermal. When you're talking unvented, we're talking very high pressures, it's basically potentially explosive if it's not fitted correctly. I do some inspections for NAPIT, and you see guys who are electricians who've hired a plumber in, the plumber's come in and he's just basically created a bomb. I don't know if any of you have seen Mythbusters, and where they explode that cylinder, they shut off all the blow-offs on it, and it launches 40 feet into the air. So when you're dealing with unvented, especially, this is a course that you really do need to understand. As I said, the aims of it is for the understanding. There's 2 manuals with this, one for England and Wales and one for Scotland. Again, different regulations north of the border. The manual for England and Wales covers approved document G3, Part L, Part P of the building regulations. It doesn't give you the qualification for Part P and Part L. It just talks about them and what you need to incorporate when you're doing a unvented or vented cylinder. And the manual for Scotland is Part J of the building standards. Okay, unfortunately that's my son there. I don't know how they got that picture. Okay, the training manuals obviously consist of vented, unvented systems and operation principles, design and installation, maintenance and compliance with other building regulations. Again, another important aspect. A lot of guys fit one thing and say, well, that's got nothing to do with me. Yeah, it does. Once you fit an unvented cylinder especially, then there's certain regulations that you have to take into consideration along with your installation. Okay, this is a bit of a long-winded slide, but I'll go through it because it's quite important. Okay, prerequisites. A very comprehensive course starts with an intensive training of 4 modules, followed by a completion of 3 assessments, including 1 practical. Candidates must successfully pass all 3 assignments to gain BPEC qualification for domestic hot water storage systems and a competency card. What trainees must do is they must hold a recognised trade qualification and be working towards or have evidence of a number of years of experience in the industry. This course is for plumbing and heating engineers wanting to install domestic hot water systems and will demonstrate that they can join a competent person scheme, allowing self-certification of installations to notify under the Building Control Department prior to commencement of work. Competent person schemes, you're all aware of the competent person schemes. If you're not, NAPIT do a competent person scheme. It's a really excellent scheme, but that allows you to self-certify that particular installation. One of the problems with vented, especially unvented cylinders now, is they're not being notified, and it is a requirement that they are notified under the building standards. Okay, this is Part L. Part L of it's called Efficiency of Domestic Heating and Hot Water Systems. As I say, we all know it's Part L. It's an energy efficient course. It's something that it's just a single day course. It's not a particularly taxing course, but it is a very informative course. The hardest part about it, there's about 200 slides that you have to sit there and look through, but it is a really good course to go on. A lot of councils, for instance, now and house associations are requiring companies to have engineers who are Part L accredited and have this qualification, and it deals with, as we've all talked and as we're all really interested in and should be, is the energy efficiency of what we're installing. Okay, benefits. You do the right things, you do your bit for the environment, you're raising the standards, especially of the industry, improving your image, gaining a reputation for quality and enhanced customer satisfaction.